I have them going 3-13, missing the playoffs. You have them going 6-11. Let's go. I love to hear it. Obviously, still missing the playoffs because they're 6-11, but a big step in the right direction here. What is it? Are you a Bryce Young believer? Are you a Dave Canales believer? Do you just think the bad spirits, the bad omens are out of the building? Talk to me about the Carolina Panthers getting to 6-11 this year.
I think of that list of things you just mentioned, I think I'm a Dave Canales believer.
Okay.
Here's where I'm at with this. Jim Harbaugh's in his own category, right? Let's talk new hires for a minute. He's in his own category. If you got Jim Harbaugh, you're winning the battle, right? Let's take him out of it. Other than Harbaugh, I think Canales was my favorite hire of all the new head coaches. I just loved even hearing him talk at the combine. We got to see his presser at the combine, and just the positive vibe that comes from him. You can tell he came up under Pete Carroll. It's just so obvious. It's like the same thing. It's just like God. He talks just like Pete Carroll. It's just everything is always just upbeat and optimistic, and we're gonna get better and we're gonna do better and things are looking up, right? And I think it can't be stated enough. I thought Canales did a spectacular job last season in Tampa, just calling plays, right? When you talk about a Bucs team that, honestly, I went into last year thinking the Bucs were going to win 5 or 6 games. And you look at what he did for Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield in 2022 had a 50.6 passing grade, right? 2023 he goes up to a 77.2, right? And Bryce Young struggled this past year. Now, I'm in the boat that Bryce Young, I think he tossed last year out. And we've seen other guys look, and I see, I hear it all the time this offseason. I see all of the tweets talking about, guys who are this bad in their rookie year, they don't turn it around. Well, I remember Jared Goff's rookie year with the Rams. Some people were saying that was like the worst rookie year ever, and McVay comes in the next year, and Goff looks solid. Trevor Lawrence with Urban Meyer his rookie year, that was every bit of that was just a disaster, and then they turned it around, and they made the postseason, right? And it's not like it hasn't happened before, and so much of this people forget. When you're a guy, all three of those guys, when you go to the team that had the number 1 overall pick, or the Panthers traded up for it, but they weren't much better than that. They were still in the top 10. You're going to a football team that's not good, right?
They're probably going to suck.
and this team, look, Adam Thielen was their best weapon last year,
Right.
And it wasn't even close. Their interior offensive line, and you're talking about Bryce Young, who generously might be 5'9". Their interior offensive line was just Swiss cheese last year. It was. And you go and get a guy like Robert Hunt at right guard, who was the 6th highest graded guard in football. You go and get a guy like Damian Lewis at left guard. You get Austin Corbett back healthy at center. You've got a whole new interior offensive line. Then you go and you draft all these guys. You draft Jonathan Brooks. You draft Xavier Legette. You draft Jatavion Sanders. You get to Deontay Johnson for literally nothing at all. And you're talking about that's a potential 1,000-yard receiver that you just walked in here and got. So you go from their weapons last year to Johnson, Thielen, and Legette. That's every bit of it just looks like a better core. But Canales last year, and knowing he had a not great interior offensive line last year in Tampa Bay, the best term I had for it when I watched their offense was like modern ball control. Because they didn't run the ball particularly well. I think Rachaad White was under 4 yards a carry on the season. They still couldn't really get downhill and run the ball well. He still tried to, right? He still had it in the book. He's like, look, I still have to do it. This is a team I need to have balance with. But the number of RPOs and quick game and screens, and I think that's another reason Jalen McMillan's going to be real fun in Tampa if they keep doing that stuff. But I thought Canales just didn't get enough credit for how well he called plays in Tampa last year. I could argue that he was actually the MVP of Tampa Bay last year, honestly. And the one thing sticks out to me, too, that he said at the Combine, and it was about, someone asked him about his decision to keep Ejiro Evero as his defensive coordinator, because this is not a bad defense. And I know they have some weak spots, especially off the edge, that we'll talk about in a bit, but this is not a bad defense. And somebody asked him about keeping Ejiro Evero as his DC, and he goes, listen, they played well under him. We had to deal with them. We only beat them 9-0 in the last game of the season. I know what this defense can do under him. I'm keeping him. I don't need to go find a new one. They have a guy that the players believe in. The coach believes in the players. And he basically said, he goes, listen, the advantage to keeping Evero in there is that I told him, he goes, take the keys to the defense. I won't touch it. I have to fix this offense. I'll be over here. I'll make the speeches, and I'll fix the offense in the same way that when Sean McVay got to the Rams, when he hired Wade Phillips as his defensive coordinator, and he said, that's all yours. You can have it. I've seen enough. I don't need to interfere with whatever you're doing on defense. I'm going to fix the offense. I'm going to make the speeches, and we're going to be rolling here. So I'm really an optimist with the Panthers, and I didn't mention in that whole spiel about it, but I've got Bryce Young as my offensive MVP. I just think the situation is so much better, and I know the contrast with C.J. Stroud and what went down in Houston last year, but Bryce Young didn't go first overall for nothing. Right, and I think we've seen him look better in this preseason. I think, honestly, you could argue he's got a similar-ish skill set to Baker Mayfield. I think Canales sees a lot of parallels here in this offense and the way he can run it. And there's some other things they're going to fix along the way and some other breakouts that have to happen. But I'm an optimist on Bryce Young. I don't think you can take anything last year into a whole lot of consideration. I just hope his confidence isn't shot, but I think Canales is going to give him that confidence.
Can I just like give you a clap? Was
that the soapbox moment? Is that what we're doing here? Did I just get on the soapbox for the Panthers?
I don't know how many people are going to be that positive on the Panthers going into the season. I'm glad that you gave Panthers fans that platform. I'm not as high on them. I still think that they have some work to go, but what you are saying, those things make sense. It's not like it's illogical to say that Dave Canales learned from being a play caller last year and that he's going to be better this year. It's not illogical to think that, man, you look at the Panthers roster at the beginning of last year, it is absolutely better this year on the offensive side of the ball, I should say, for answering the is Bryce Young the guy question. Now, the defense, I obviously still have a lot of worries about, just exactly how explosive this offense is going to be. We'll see. But second half of the season, I could see Carolina getting into a little bit of a rhythm here. I think it's still going to be a struggle for this team. I don't think they're quite there yet, but I at least think they're going in the right direction. And I'm glad that you gave Panthers fans some concrete, logical reasons to be optimistic here as the season goes on. So bravo to you, my friend. My offensive MVP, obviously it is Bryce. He has to play better, but I knew that you were going to talk about Bryce from looking at the sheet before the show. Deontay Johnson, you trade for him for a reason. You bring him in for a reason. You drafted Xavier Legette, and I think he's going to be a big part of this team, no doubt about it. But Deontay Johnson is the guy who's been in the NFL for a while now. 2023 was his best receiving grade of a single season that he has had, 79.1, and it was his best QB rating yielded when he was targeted last year at 94.1. So this guy is playing pretty dang well, and he's been playing pretty dang well as of recently. They need him to be this type of a player. They didn't have this type of a player last year, and when you add him and Xavier Legette into this wide receiver room, you've got some decent tight end options as well. You've got some running backs that you can throw the ball to, especially when Jonathan Brooks gets back and he is healthy. I'll get to that in a little bit. I think how Deontay Johnson plays and if he can really assume these roles as the true wide receiver one for this team, that is going to mean a lot for Bryce Young. It's going to mean a lot for him as a veteran presence because Xavier Legette's going to kind of go through it himself. He's got to figure things out as a rookie anyways, and especially with him being a first-time breakout player last year. So I think that a lot of it is on Deontay Johnson's shoulders. My defensive MVP, I'm going to go with Derek Brown, their interior defensive lineman. Brown played 938 snaps last year. That was the most of any interior defender in the NFL, and yet he had the fourth highest overall grade when doing so, 90.1, to play over 900 snaps and have a 90.1 overall grade is such an incredible season start to finish. I think their whole defense needs to be built around what this guy can do on the defensive line, and it's going to take a little bit of time. I know they signed Jadeveon Clowney. We'll see what he could be. We need a fully healthy year, J.C. Horn, but to me, they got a great one in Derek Brown for how well he was able to play. But who's your defensive MVP?
Mine, I'm going to go in the secondary, and I do I love Brown. I mean, Brown is such a great pick. He's such a great player. Another one of those freaks on the defensive line that we see all over the NFL now, and I like the way they've supported the front seven, signing guys like Jadeveon Clowney and Josie Jewell, linebacker. I'm going in the secondary, though. I think it's J.C. Horn. He's gotten better in each of the last two seasons. Last year, dealt with injuries, only played 6 games, but put up an 84.1 overall grade in those 6 games. That was tied for 6th best in the NFL. And the impact of him, especially in a way that Ejiro Evero likes to run his zone defenses and the way Horn is able to play off coverage and keep his eyes on the quarterback and really react off of that. Their team coverage grade in those 6 games that he did play was 10 points higher than in the 11 games he didn't. He is on the doorstep of getting into that upper echelon of corners. And I know a couple of years ago, really good passer rating, allowed numbers, yards per coverage, coverage snap numbers. He's a guy who, if he just now, with the way he started to develop last season, and if he's healthy for all 17 games this season, he's the anchor of their secondary. Certain teams, it's a safety. Certain teams, it's a corner. And did I make all four? I made all four of my defensive MVPs in this episode, guys, in the secondary. I guess coverage is just really winning the battle for me.
I didn't even notice that either.
I just noticed it just now. I was like, I just picked
big coverage guy.
I picked 3 safeties in a corner. I'm a big coverage guy. Got to be able to cover. But no, and I think the Panthers can cover. Again, this is not a bad defense. And you've got a couple of guys in Brown and in J.C. Horn that aren't just good players. Very well. Brown is prime time for sure. And I think J.C. Horn might be a prime time player if he can play every game this year. Was really good in a limited sample last year, and the impact he brings as their number one corner makes a huge difference when he's on the field.
Oh, I think J.C. Horn can be an all-pro player when he's healthy. I really do. We just have not seen it enough.
And he's
I would love to get a fully healthy season at J.C. Horn this year.
I think is he 20? Is he 24 years old? He's still incredibly young too.
Yeah, he's still pretty young. So I think it's all within the cards. My breakout player, I'm going to go to the offensive line. They need the offensive line to have some breakout players in a lot of different ways. They've got some new faces. Ike Ekwonu's got to play a lot better. But another guy I think needs to play a lot better, who I've got some faith in, Chandler Zavala, another offensive lineman. 27.9. Yes, you heard me. 27.9 overall grade last year on 374 snaps. That is not good. 85.5 overall grade on 66 total snaps this preseason, now as a starting right guard. Now, I think that his background's worth mentioning here. Played at Fairmount State for most of his college career, which is a D2 school. Played well enough to where, he transfers over to NC State, plays a season at NC State. That year was an acclimation year anyway, so then he gets drafted. He plays in the NFL rookie season, doesn't play very well. The grades are pretty bad. It's all logical to say, like, hey, he's still figuring it out, like, as in totality. And so for him to really struggle that rookie year and then already look much better in this preseason, it's why he was talked about as a sleeper in his draft class, as somebody that we could see as a riser, not because he was going to stand out immediately when he got to the NFL. That's not what his background would have told you was probably going to be the case. And in fact, this is probably exactly what people would have told you is the most logical path for Chandler Zavala's career, even the ones who saw it ascending to its highest heights, whatever that was going to be. It was going to struggle early on, but you had faith that this guy figured it out at the D2 level. He figured it out when he was at NC State, and you think that he's got the talent level to figure it out now at the NFL. So loved seeing those much higher grades in the preseason. To me, it hints that he's going to have a great year, a much better year this upcoming season. So I think Zavala is going to be a breakout candidate for him. But what about a best rookie? Who you got here?
You want me to go breakout first, or?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Okay,
well, I'm trying to skip ahead.
I was going to stay right in that same group on the offensive line, and a guy who started to, especially in the second half of last year, a guy you just mentioned right at the top of that speech there, and that's Ike Ekwonu at left tackle. I think Dave Canales walks into this situation and he felt good about his tackle situation, right? You have Ekwonu, you have Taylor Moton, and then he could go fix the interior in free agency and do all that, right? But Ekwonu had the 11th best run block grade at 77 among all tackles last season. He's got to find more consistency in pass protection. And look, this entire team has to find more consistency in pass protection. That's just a theme for all of them, not just Ekwonu. But I think going into his third year, especially, you talk about Canales does want to come in here and run the ball, whether it be with Chuba Hubbard, whether it be with Jonathan Brooks when he gets healthy. He wants balance in this offense for sure. Then he can get into his RPO stuff and all of that. But if Ekwonu further improves the run block grade, and he's an elite run blocker, and then we get more consistency in pass protection off of the edge, and again, we need that for the entire unit, Zavala included, right? I think you start talking about what could be a good offensive line as opposed to what it was last year. You've got some real studs, and if Ekwonu lives up to the draft status now going forward into his third year, I think you're really having a different conversation about this Panthers offense.
On paper, such a better and deeper offensive line than it was a year before. When you plug in Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis, you get Austin Corbin back at center. You've got Taylor Moton at right tackle. If Ike Ekwonu takes that next step, I mentioned you got Chandler Zavala as sort of that swing interior offensive lineman now. Brady Christensen, I think, who they're comfortable now playing him at tackle because he always should have been a tackle because it's what he was best at when he was in college. Wow, shocker, incredible. But yeah, so now you've got Josh Nijman on this team as well. It is a much deeper, and you could be much more optimistic about this Panthers offensive line. Is it going to be the best in the NFL? No, probably not that. But a step in the right direction to answer the Bryce Young question. Yes, I think that is certainly within the cards. I also think that's something that helps that for my best rookie. I'm going to say Jonathan Brooks. And I fully understand that Jonathan Brooks is starting the season on the PUP list. He is still recovering from that torn ACL that he had in mid-November of last year. But before that point, in my opinion, Jonathan Brooks was clearly RB1 in the upcoming draft. Very clearly RB1. He could do everything for you. He was a great runner, had good vision, good balance, good speed, good receiving ability. He was a 3-down type of back, and Texas was using him as such. Elite overall, 91.9 grade last season. Excuse me, it was a 91.9 rushing grade last season, but his overall grade was very high as well. So big fan of Jonathan Brooks, and even if it's just in the second half of the season, I think he helps his team out a lot.
I agree. I loved watching Brooks at Texas last year. He ran so hard. Guys just bounced off of him. You don't arm tackle Jonathan Brooks, right? And he very well, if he didn't get hurt, very well could have been on his way to a Doak Walker Award. But I'm going to go on the outside. I'm going to go with their first-round pick that they traded in to get, and that's Xavier Legette. Look, on top of all of the other problems the Panthers had last year, they were just not capable of getting the ball more than 10 yards downfield. They were last in the league in receiving grade on 10-plus yard targets, okay? Xavier Legette led college football in receiving grade on 10-plus yard targets, ahead of Neighbors, ahead of Harrison, ahead of Odunze, ahead of Worthy, ahead of Thomas, ahead of everybody. He was just the freak of freaks at South Carolina. Spent 4 years there prior to last year and just didn't really get a chance to play, and just wasn't. They just didn't see his talent for 4 years. And last year he steps on the field and he's incredible as a vertical target. He's big. He's got a lot of muscle on him for sure. 6'1", a big frame. Some people say A.J. Brown. I thought, and I find it interesting with Canales running this offense now. When I watched Xavier Legette's tape back during draft prep, I saw, and I was surprised he measured in at only 6'1", because I thought he was going to be taller. But
yeah,
knowing that he was 6'1", my comp for him in my head was smaller DK Metcalf.
Play style,
I
for
just
sure.
See
just a contested catch monster.
The play style, yeah. I see like size, strength, speed, a little bit shorter, but I see DK Metcalf, and I think Dave Canales saw some similarities to Metcalf as well, knowing that he had Metcalf and got to be around him in Seattle. And to have a guy like that now to complement Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson, the run game, the tight ends, I think Jatavion Sanders is going to be a really good player for them very soon too. It won't shock me by the end of the year if he has that starting job. I think he's super reliable. But to have a guy like Legette, again, like Shaheed in New Orleans, that just makes safeties, makes deep players respect you, right? And I'm not saying Legette's going to lead this team in catches. He's not. But I think if he can bring what he could bring them as a vertical playmaker and a guy, even a guy after the catch. We saw plays at South Carolina after the catch where it's like, whoa, this guy's he was just shot out of a cannon. And at that size, that's a freight train running at you if he gets going full speed. Got to get some more polish on the routes. Absolutely ran kind of a simple route tree down there, but I'll tell you what, I think Legette is the perfect guy. At that spot where they were picking and traded up a couple spots in the draft, I don't think they could have got a better guy that they needed for their offense than Legette.